Hello, it is 6 a.m. in Washington. It's 1 p.m. in Cairo. I'm Monita Rajpal. You're watching CNN, the world's news leader. This is World One, live from London. Tens of thousands of Egyptian protesters are now demanding the ouster of their nation's caretaker military government. Chants filled the air in Cairo's Tahrir Square Tuesday after military chief Mohammed Hussein Tantawi promised to speed the transfer to democratic civilian rule. Many are calling it too little, too late. For change are being heard in cities right across Egypt, but especially in Cairo's Tahrir Square, where similar protests forced out longtime leader Hosni Mubarak just 9 months ago. CNN's Ivan Watson is there now with the latest. And Ivan, it seems as though no matter what Tantawi says or what the military government says right now, it's not enough.
That is exactly what seems to be the case right now. Marshal Tantawi finally addressing the nation on Tuesday night.
Watson there in Cairo. We want to see what newspapers around the world are saying about this. In Turkey today, Zaman has this headline: should Egypt's elections be postponed? Well, the analysis piece says what Egypt needs first is a new, respected civilian leadership, a clear timetable for the army's exit from politics, and a societal climate conducive to honest and transparent elections. These conditions simply cannot be met in a few days. There is an opinion piece in the Guardian newspaper here in the UK. It's written by the novelist and commentator Adaf Suif, who is from Cairo, and it's headlined, "This is why the revolution is back on the streets of Egypt." Now, it goes on to say, as things stand, it is clear that the chances are we will go through elections to emerge with a toothless parliament, like the toothless Sharaf government, that will then provide cover for the military Supreme Council to write a constitution. And finally, the Times of Oman has this headline: Egypt's headless revolution. The opinion piece says the latest wave of protests reflects increasing frustrations with the management of the country's political transition. Unlike Egypt's revolts of 1882, 1990, and 1952, the revolution of 2011 is leaderless. The President Bashar al-Assad shows no sign of relinquishing his tight grip on power, even as international voices condemning his regime grow louder. Tuesday saw the first resolution against Syria's violent crackdown passed at the United Nations, not by the Security Council, but by the UN's Humanitarian Committee. It passed a motion condemning the actions of the Assad regime and supporting an Arab League peace initiative. But far from the UN chamber, a local group of activists said violence across Syria claimed another 33 lives. You're watching World One, live from London. Bahrain, they were the instruments of a government assault on pro-democracy demonstrators that began in February. Now, police in the Gulf Kingdom are waiting to hear if they'll be held to account for the alleged mistreatment of protesters. CNN's Mohammed Jamjoon is in Bahrain's capital, Manama. He joins us now live. This is a change in tactic, or a change in stance, I should say, by the Bahraini government.
Oh, absolutely, Monita. While, the government here and opposition activists have been anticipating the release of this report by the Bahrain Independent Commission of Inquiry for...
Yemen's president has arrived in the Saudi capital, Riyadh. Ali Abdullah Saleh is expected to put his signature to a deal that will finally end his 33-year reign on power, but leave him immune from prosecution. The embattled leader had been fighting to defend his position since protests against his rule broke out in February. Nem El-Bagir is here with us in the studio with more of that. And as we're speaking, there are reports of clashes there in Sana'a. What kind of impact do you think that could have on this deal?
Well, the clashes are actually between the government loyalists and the forces of Sadiq al-Ahmad, the tribal opposition leader, who is not part of this deal.
There. All right, Nema, thank you so much. You are watching World One, live from London. Are you optimistic about your country's future? Well, here in Great Britain, one group in particular certainly sees the glass as half full. Find out who we're talking about in just a minute. Say religion and faith go hand in hand. Here's a new study that's suggesting that religion and optimism could be just as closely linked. Researchers have been asking people who profess a religious faith and those who don't what they think about Britain's future. And the results suggest that Muslims are, on average, more upbeat about the future than other religious communities. When asked, do you think Britain's best days are behind it, 44% of respondents said Yeah. Almost 50% of Anglicans agreed, but only 31% of British Muslims said the country has seen better days. Well, Richard Green is our religious affairs correspondent, and he joins us now. I mean, is it a surprise that Muslims are among the proudest and most optimistic in Britain?
I think for some people it will be. You know, Britain has a very rapidly growing Muslim minority, and that makes some people in Britain nervous. You know, there are fears about countries.
There is something to be said, though, about the American patriotism, which is, you know, and having lived there, you know, I like that. I like the fact that there are people that are proud of where they come from and where they live.
Well, the example that they gave in this particular study of American pride was Thanksgiving, which is coming up. So I hope everybody there is happy and optimistic.
Turkey Day tomorrow. All right, there. Thank you, Richard, for that. Richard Green. Now, the parents of a missing British toddler will testify before an inquiry into media ethics in London today. Madeleine McCann went missing during a family holiday in Portugal back in 2007. Jerry McCann says the subsequent media onslaught became unbearable. Atika Schubert joins us now live from the Royal Courts of Justice in central London. Atika.
Well, we haven't heard from the McCanns yet. We're expecting to hear from them later this afternoon. But as you point out, it's likely to be about how they were hounded by the press and how it changed their lives. You may take a long time. This is really just the beginning. This inquiry could take well over a year.
Okay, Atika, thank you for that. Atika Schubert there at the Royal Courts of Justice in central London. You are watching World One live from London. As we've mentioned, protesters in Egypt are not buying their military's latest pledge for a speedy route to democracy. That may be because it comes from a contingent once aligned with their former leader, and it may be because they've heard it all before. Well, CNN's Ben Wiedemann reports now from Cairo's Tahrir Square.
It was a speech that promised an accelerated transfer to civilian rule.
Following in the footsteps of tyranny, the message from Turkey's prime minister to President Bashar al-Assad couldn't be any clearer. On Tuesday, Recep Tayyip Erdogan tied up the fate of the Syrian leader with Hitler and Mussolini if, like them, he turns on his own people.
Bashar al-Assad says, "I will fight till I die. For God's sake, who are you fighting against? To fight against your own people till you die is not heroism, it is cowardice."
In the United States, foreign policy and national security took center stage in a debate among the 8 major Republican Party presidential candidates Tuesday night. The debate in downtown Washington exposed deep differences among the Republicans. Among the questions posed by Wolf Blitzer, should the U.S. continue to send aid to Pakistan?
At this point, I would continue that aid, but I do think that the Obama policy...
Well, it was a revealing night involving a topic that really hasn't been debated much in this year's presidential race. Jill Doherty is CNN's World Affairs correspondent. She joins us now live from Washington. And Jill, one thing that we can say about last night's debate was that there isn't much cohesion within the Republican Party, at least amongst the candidates.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, in some debates, candidates just kind of trot out their talking points.
And as America wakes up this morning, it is almost 6:45 there in the morning there in Washington where you are. Is there a sense as to who came out on top from the debate last night?
You know, I don't think that there's any one candidate, but everybody kind of had their own little litmus test. And I think you'd have to say that Gingrich now is slightly in the lead, and he seems to have done quite well. After all, he's a professor. He's been on TV forever. He's very good, glib, and able to speak extemporaneously. And then I think you'd have to say Romney pretty much did what he was expected to. So we'll see.
We'll see indeed. Jill, thank you so much for that. Jill Doherty there in Washington. You're watching World One live from London. Now, there's nothing worse than a one-sided match in any sport, but sometimes they are absolutely riveting. Don Riddell is here to explain why. I'm actually quite excited about this.
Yes, you should be. I know you're a big fan. Thanks, yes. Monita. Roger Federer is one of the all-time tennis greats, as you know, and his record of 16 Grand Slam titles may never be surpassed. But he says last night's win against his longtime rival, Rafael Nadal, for now.
Plenty there indeed. All right, Don, thank you very much. You're watching World One live from London. Just ahead, a headache for travelers in Britain, where the problem isn't so much what you can see as to what you can't see, Mari.
That's right, and what you can't see is the runway in many cases. This is a picture behind me of the morning fog.
Welcome back. This is World One, live from London. We are approaching almost 7 a.m. in New York, almost 1 p.m. in Berlin, and it's almost 9 p.m. in Tokyo. A blanket of white covers much of southeast Britain as the fog rolls in yet again. Mari Ramos is at the International Weather Center with more on that. Mari.
Hey, you know, I think we were kind of all hoping that today would be better than yesterday, but it appears that in some cases we're seeing the flight delays even bigger today than...
All right, Mari, thank you very much for that. Now, let's bring you up to date on some of the other stories that we're talking about here on World One. Not a great day to be a turkey in the U.S., with millions of Americans getting ready for a traditional Thanksgiving feast, but some good news for some turkeys. Barack Obama is continuing a presidential ritual by pardoning a turkey, as he did in these pictures from last year. In fact, two birds get their release papers today, one called Liberty and the other called Peace. Good to know that liberty and peace are safe in America. Now, movie audiences love a good laugh, but it seems comedies aren't so popular with Hollywood's Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. U.S. Director Judd Apatow thinks comedies don't get enough Oscars. He's calling for a special comedy category. The man behind Knocked Up and The 40-Year-Old Virgin thinks there's just way too much drama and not enough fun on the red carpet. Sometimes, if you look at the fashion, maybe a little bit fun. And there are plenty of one-horse towns, but a one-person town, not so much. This is Monowai in the U.S. state of Nebraska. Population 1. Yeah, 1. Elsie Eiler, 78 years old, is the mayor, is the bartender, and she's the cook at the only restaurant for miles. She may live alone, but apparently she's not lonely. She says she's had visitors from all over the world and former residents who've moved away keep in touch with letters, cards, and photos. You're watching World One, live from London. I'm Monita Rajpal. Thank you for joining us. We'll update you on the top stories in just a moment, right here on CNN.